In the vast plains of Sudan, under the burning African sun, a girl was born who was destined to change the world with her extraordinary faith and strength. Her original name was lost in the shadows of history, but the world would come to know her as Josephine Bakhita, the Fortunate. Her life, a journey from the chains of slavery to the freedom of the spirit, is a moving testimony to the transformative power of love and faith. Imagine for a moment a girl of just 7 years, torn from the arms of her family, forced to walk barefoot for hundreds of kilometers under the blazing sun, sold as a commodity in the slave markets. This is the reality that Bakhita faced in her early years. However, what makes her story truly extraordinary is not only the suffering she endured, but the light she managed to radiate in the midst of the deepest darkness. The life of Josephine Bakhita is a tale of indomitable resilience, of a faith that blossomed in the most unlikely ground, and of a love that transcended the barriers of hatred and prejudice. It is a story that challenges us to question our own struggles and find the strength to forgive and love even in the most adverse circumstances. As we delve into the life of this extraordinary saint, we will embark on a journey that will take us from the wild lands of Sudan to the tranquil convents of Italy. We will witness how an enslaved girl became a free woman, not only in body, but also in spirit. We will see how her unyielding faith not only sustained her through unimaginable hardships, but also inspired all those around her. The story of Saint Josephine Bakhita is a powerful reminder that holiness is not a privilege reserved for a select few, but a universal calling that can blossom even in the most unlikely circumstances. It is a testimony that God's love can penetrate even the darkest corners of the human experience, bringing light, hope, and transformation. Prepare to be inspired, challenged, and deeply moved as we embark on this journey through the life of one of the most extraordinary saints of modern times. Bakhita's story is more than just a simple biography. It is a beacon of hope for all who struggle, a call to compassion for all who have been blessed, and a testament to the transformative power of faith for all who seek a deeper meaning in life. May the life of Saint Josephine Bakhita inspire us all to find light in the midst of darkness, to forgive the unforgivable, and to love unreservedly. For in her story, we find not only the account of a saint, but a mirror reflecting our own potential for spiritual greatness. Chapter 1. A Stolen Childhood. The sun was just beginning to peek over the hills of Olgosa, a small village in the Darfur region of western Sudan, when a girl with dark skin and bright eyes stepped out of her mud hut. It was the year 1869. Although for the little girl, who was about 7 years old at the time was measured by the seasons of planting and harvest, not by Western calendars. Her original name has been lost in the mists of time, but we know she belonged to the Daju tribe, a proud people with a rich history. The girl lived a simple but happy life, surrounded by the love of her parents and her 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Her father was the brother of the village chief, which granted the family a certain status within the community. Every morning, the little girl helped her mother grind sorghum for breakfast, listening to the stories that the elders told about the spirits of the earth and sky. In the afternoons, she played with her siblings in the nearby fields, chasing butterflies and dreaming of the day when she would be old enough to help with the harvest. But the peace of this idyllic life was about to be brutally interrupted. At that time, Sudan was a hotbed of tribal conflicts and slave raids. Arab traffickers and the Baggara, Muslim nomads, frequently made incursions into southern villages, kidnapping children and adults alike to sell them in the northern slave markets. One day, while the girl and one of her friends had gone out to gather herbs in the fields near the village, they saw 2 armed men approaching. At first, curiosity overcame fear. They had never seen strangers like these with their strange clothes and shiny weapons. But when one of the men roughly grabbed her friend, terror seized her. "Run!" her friend shouted, but it was too late. The other man caught her, covering her mouth to muffle her screams. Within minutes, her world collapsed. She was ripped away from everything she knew and loved, dragged far from her home and family. The following days were a blurred nightmare of forced long walks, hunger, and constant fear. The girl, along with other captives, was forced to march for days under the scorching sun, her bare feet bleeding from the rocks and thorns of the path. Each night, she slept to the sound of the cries and laments of her unfortunate companions. Amidst this torment, something strange happened in the girl's mind. The trauma of the kidnapping was so great that it erased almost all memories of her previous life. She forgot the name her parents had given her, forgot the faces of her loved ones, even forgot how she had come to this terrible situation. Only a vague memory of having once been happy remained, long ago. After what seemed like weeks of travel, they arrived at a slave market in El Obeid. There, the girl was sold for the first time, beginning a series of transactions that would lead her from one master to another, each more cruel than the last. At that moment, one of her captors gave her the name Bakhita, which in Arabic means fortunate. It was a cruel irony for a girl who had lost everything. Over the next years, Bakhita would be sold and resold at least 5 times. Each new master seemed to surpass the previous one in cruelty. She was beaten regularly, sometimes to the point of being unable to move for days. On one occasion, a jealous mistress beat her so brutally that she was convalescent for a month. But the worst torment was yet to come. When she was about 13 years old, Bakhita was bought by a Turkish general. The general's wife and daughter decided to mark her as their permanent property. They subjected her to a scarification ritual, a common practice among some African peoples but carried out with unusual brutality. For hours they cut her chest, abdomen and right arm with a blade, rubbing salt into the open wounds to ensure that the scars would be permanent. The pain was indescribable. Bakhita thought she would die, and part of her wished that it would be so. But she survived, forever carrying the marks of her slavery on her body. Despite all this suffering, something in Bakhita refused to break. Deep within her being, she kept alive a small flame of hope. She did not know where this inner strength came from, but she clung to it in her darkest moments. Years later, when Bakhita had found peace and freedom, she would reflect on these early years of her life. With a humility and compassion that astonished all who knew her, she would say, "If I met the slave traders who kidnapped me and even those who tortured me, I would kneel to kiss their hands, because if that had not happened, I would not be a Christian and a religious now." This ability to forgive, to find purpose even in the most atrocious suffering, would be one of the defining characteristics of Bakhita's life. But in those early years of slavery, that transformation was still far off. For now, she was just a scared and wounded girl, clinging to a hope she barely understood, waiting for a change that seemed impossible, and yet, change would come. In ways Bakhita could never have imagined, her life was about to take a radical turn. The path to freedom and sanctity was about to open before her, though she would still have to face many trials before finding the peace she so longed for. Chapter 2: A Ray of Hope. The year 1882 marked a turning point in Bakhita's life. After years of being transferred from one cruel master to another, she was bought by Callisto Legnani, the Italian consul in Sudan. For the first time in her young life, Bakhita experienced humane and compassionate treatment. Legnani, unlike her previous masters, did not treat her as a possession but as a human being. In his home, Bakhita was not beaten or mistreated. She was assigned household chores, but she was allowed to rest and eat properly. This drastic change in her situation was like a ray of light, penetrating the darkness that had enveloped her existence for so long. In Legnani's house, Bakhita began to regain some of the dignity that had been stripped from her. Although she was still technically a slave, she began to experience small moments of joy and peace. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to smile and even laugh occasionally. However, the political situation in Sudan was becoming increasingly unstable. The Mahdist rebellion, an Islamic uprising against the Egyptian government controlling Sudan, was gaining strength. Legnani, concerned for his safety and that of his home, decided to return to Italy. It was at this moment that Bakhita faced a decision that would change the course of her life. Legnani offered her the option of staying in Sudan or accompanying him to Italy. For Bakhita, the choice was clear. Although Italy was an unknown and distant place, it represented the promise of a better life, far from the constant threat of falling back into the hands of cruel masters. Thus, in 1885, Bakhita left the African continent behind and embarked on a journey that would take her to a completely new world. The journey to Italy was an overwhelming experience for the young girl. She had never seen the sea, and the ship that carried them across the Mediterranean seemed to her an incomprehensible marvel. Upon arriving in Genoa, Bakhita found herself in a world that challenged everything she knew. The tall buildings, the paved streets, the multitude of light-skinned people, all were new and bewildering. But what struck her most was the treatment she received. In Italy, people looked at her with curiosity, but not with the cruelty she was accustomed to. Shortly after her arrival in Italy, Legnani decided to gift Bakhita to the Michieli family. Augusto Michieli and his wife Maria Teresa Michieli were a wealthy couple living in Zianigo, near Venice. They had a small daughter named Mimina, and Bakhita was assigned as her nanny and servant. In the Michieli household, Bakhita continued to experience kind treatment. Maria Teresa, in particular, developed an affection for the young African girl. Although Bakhita was still technically a slave, her life in Italy was incomparably better than what she had known in Sudan. It was during this time that Bakhita began to have her first encounters with Christianity. The Michielis were Catholics, and although they were not particularly devout, Bakhita observed their religious practices with curiosity. She saw crucifixes on the walls and images of the Virgin Mary, and she wondered about the meaning of these symbols. One day, while walking in Venice with Mimina, Bakhita saw a marble statue that took her breath away. It was a representation of Jesus crucified. Something in that image of suffering and love resonated deeply within her. Later she would say, "I did not know who he was, but I could not take my eyes off him." This encounter planted a seed in Bakhita's heart. Although she did not yet understand Christianity, she began to feel an attraction to something she could not name. It was as if a light began to shine in the distance, promising answers to questions she didn't even know she had. However, Bakhita's life was about to take another unexpected turn. The Michielis decided to move to Sudan to manage a hotel. Not wanting to expose Mimina to the rigors of the African climate, they decided to leave her in Italy in the care of the Canossian sisters in Venice. Bakhita was sent along with Mimina to help care for her. Chapter 3: The Awakening of Faith. The Catechumen Institute, run by the Canossian sisters in Venice, became the setting for the next chapter in Bakhita's life. Here, in this quiet convent, Bakhita would begin a journey of spiritual discovery that would transform her life forever. The Canossian sisters, known for their dedication to education and service to the poor, welcomed Bakhita with warmth and kindness. For the first time in her life, Bakhita found herself in an environment of peace and unconditional love. The sisters treated her with respect and dignity, something that contrasted sharply with the treatment she had received for most of her life. It was during this time that Bakhita began to receive formal instruction in the Catholic faith. The sisters, noticing her interest and curiosity, began to teach her the fundamentals of Catholicism. For Bakhita, these teachings were like fresh water to a thirsty soul. As she learned about God, Jesus, and the teachings of the Church, Bakhita felt something within her coming to life. The stories of the Gospel in particular moved her deeply. The image of Jesus suffering for the love of humanity resonated with her own experience of suffering. But more than that, it offered her a new perspective on suffering, one that spoke of redemption and love instead of cruelty and despair. One day, while reflecting on what she had learned, Bakhita had a revelation. She would later describe this moment by saying, "Looking at the sun, the moon, and the stars, I said within myself, 'Who is the owner of these beautiful things?' And I felt a great desire to see him, to know him, and to pay homage to him." This search for God, which had begun unconsciously in her heart during her years of slavery, now found its expression in the Catholic faith. Bakhita began to understand that the God she now knew was the same one who had sustained her during her darkest years, even though she did not know it then. As her understanding and love for God grew, Bakhita made a decision that would change the course of her life. She decided that she wanted to be baptized and become Catholic. This decision, however, was not without complications. When the Michielis returned from Sudan and came to collect Mimina and Bakhita, they encountered an unexpected situation. Bakhita, with a new confidence born from her growing faith, declared that she did not want to return with them. She wanted to stay in the convent and continue her Christian formation. This decision caused a crisis. The Michaelis insisted that Bakhita was their property and had to return with them. Bakhita, for her part, stood firm in her desire to stay. The matter even went to the Italian courts. It was at this moment that Bakhita's legal situation played a crucial role. Italy, unlike Sudan, did not recognize slavery. Therefore, from the moment Bakhita had set foot on Italian soil, she had technically been a free woman, although neither she nor the Michaelis knew it at the time. The court ruled in favor of Bakhita, declaring that she was a free woman and had the right to decide her own future. This decision marked a turning point in Bakhita's life. For the first time, she was truly free, not only in body but also in spirit. With her freedom secured, Bakhita was able to continue her Christian formation. On January 9, 1890, at the age of about 28, her exact age was uncertain due to the circumstances of her birth and kidnapping, Bakhita was baptized and confirmed. She took the Christian name Josephine Margaret Fortunata. The surname Bakhita, given to her by her captors, she kept as a reminder of her past and the long journey she had traveled. The day of her baptism was one of the happiest in Bakhita's life. She would later say, "That day I was so happy that I cannot describe it in words. I felt like a queen." For her, this moment represented not only her official entry into the Catholic Church, but also the beginning of a new life, a life of freedom and purpose. But Bakhita's spiritual journey was far from over. After her baptism, she felt an even deeper calling. She wanted to dedicate her life completely to God and the service of others. Thus, in 1893, Bakhita entered the novitiate of the Canossian Sisters. On December 8, 1896, Josephine Bakhita made her perpetual vows as a Canossian religious. The girl who had once been ripped from her home and sold as a slave was now freely dedicating herself to the service of God. Her vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, far from being a new form of slavery, were for her the deepest expression of her newly discovered freedom. In the following years, Sister Josephine Bakhita would serve in various Canossian communities in Italy. Her humility, kindness, and unwavering faith impressed all who knew her. She was often assigned simple tasks: cook, sacristan, porter. But in every task, no matter how humble, Bakhita found an opportunity to serve God and others. Her presence in the communities where she served was like a beacon of light and hope. Her warm smile and kind disposition drew people to her. Many came seeking her advice, or simply to be in her comforting presence. Bakhita, who had known the darkest side of humanity, became an instrument of healing and reconciliation for many. As the years passed, the fame of Bakhita's holiness began to spread. People spoke of the African nun whose radiant faith and unconditional love seemed to transform all who surrounded her. But for Bakhita, this attention was secondary. Her only desire was to serve God and share the love she had discovered with everyone she encountered. In her later years, Bakhita often reflected on the strange path that had taken her from slavery to freedom, from despair to hope. With a humility that astonished all, she said, "All my life has been a gift from God. I am truly fortunate. The Lord loves me very much." The life of Josephine Bakhita is a powerful testimony to the transformative power of faith and love. From the depths of slavery and suffering, she emerged as a beacon of hope and forgiveness. Her spiritual journey reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, the light of God's love can penetrate and transform. Chapter 4: A Life of Service and Love. The years following her perpetual vows were a period of quiet but profoundly significant service for Sister Josephine Bakhita. Assigned to the Canossian house in Schio in northern Italy, Bakhita found her true home and the place where she would spend most of her religious life. In Schio, Bakhita performed a variety of humble but essential tasks. She worked as a cook, sacristan, and porter. Each task, no matter how mundane, she carried out with a love and dedication that impressed all around her. For Bakhita, there was no task too small or insignificant if it was done for the love of God. As the porter of the convent, Bakhita was often the first face that visitors saw. Her warm smile and gentle presence became a comfort to many. People from the town began to affectionately call her Mother Moretta, Little Black Mother, or Sister Moretta. Despite her limited formal education, Bakhita possessed a deep wisdom that emanated from her unwavering faith and life experience. People began to seek her out for advice and prayers. Many found in her presence a peace and comfort they could not explain. One of the most notable aspects of Bakhita's life was her ability to forgive. Despite the horrors she had suffered, she never harbored bitterness or resentment towards her former captors. Instead, she prayed for them and expressed gratitude for the path that had led her to know God. This capacity to forgive left a profound impression on all who knew her story. During World War I, Shio became a center of military activity. The convent where Bakhita lived was transformed into a hospital for wounded soldiers. During this time, Bakhita devoted herself to caring for the injured and dying. Her kindness and compassion were a balm for many soldiers suffering not only physical wounds, but also the psychological trauma of war. As the years passed, Bakhita's health began to deteriorate. She suffered from severe arthritis and asthma, causing her constant pain. However, even in the midst of her suffering, Bakhita maintained her cheerful spirit and unwavering faith. She often said, "As the Master wishes," when asked about her health. In her later years, Bakhita wrote an autobiography at the request of her superior. This act of obedience left us a moving testimony of her life and faith. In her writings, Bakhita reveals not only the horrors she endured, but also the profound peace and joy she found in her relationship with God. As she approached the end of her life, Bakhita often fell into delirium due to pneumonia. In these moments, she relived the traumas of her past. The sisters who cared for her would listen as she pleaded, "Please loosen the chains. They are so heavy." These episodes were a poignant reminder of the suffering Bakhita had endured and overcome. In her final moments of clarity, Bakhita uttered words that summed up her life and faith. "I am so happy. Our Lady, Our Lady." She died on February 8, 1947, surrounded by her loving religious sisters. The news of Bakhita's death spread quickly through Shio and beyond. Thousands of people attended her funeral, a testament to the impact this humble nun had on so many lives. Many already considered her a saint. The legacy of Josephine Bakhita continued to grow after her death. Her story of faith, forgiveness, and unconditional love inspired many. In 1978, Pope Paul VI declared the opening of her beatification cause. On October 1, 2000, Pope John Paul II canonized Josephine Bakhita, declaring her a saint of the Catholic Church. In his homily, the Pope said, "In Saint Josephine Bakhita, we find an eminent witness of God's paternal love and a bright sign of the perennial relevance of the Beatitudes." Bakhita's canonization was a moment of great joy, especially for the people of Sudan and for all those fighting against modern slavery and human trafficking. Saint Josephine Bakhita became a symbol of hope for the oppressed and a challenge to those who perpetuate systems of exploitation. Today, Saint Josephine Bakhita is venerated worldwide. Her feast day is celebrated on February 8th, the anniversary of her death. She is the patroness of Sudan and a model of faith and forgiveness for all Christians. Her life reminds us that even from the darkest circumstances, a bright light of love and hope can emerge. Epilogue: the enduring legacy of Saint Josephine Bakhita. The impact of Saint Josephine Bakhita's life extends far beyond her time on earth. Her story continues to inspire and challenge people of all ages and backgrounds around the world. For the Catholic Church, Bakhita represents a powerful example of how God's grace can transform even the most desperate situations. Her life is a testament to the inherent dignity of every human being and a reminder that holiness is within reach of all, regardless of their origins or circumstances. In Sudan, her homeland, Bakhita is venerated as a daughter who brought honor to her nation. Her story has helped shed light on the painful history of slavery in the region and has inspired efforts to combat the modern forms of slavery that still persist. For human rights advocates and those fighting against human trafficking, Bakhita has become a symbol of hope and resilience. Her story serves as a powerful reminder of the human spirit's resilience and the possibility of healing and forgiving, even after traumatic experiences. In the realm of racial reconciliation, Bakhita's life offers valuable lessons. Her ability to forgive her oppressors and her acceptance by the Italian community demonstrate the possibility of overcoming racial and cultural barriers through love and mutual understanding. For women around the world, especially those facing oppression and discrimination, Bakhita is a model of strength and dignity. Her life shows that women can overcome even the most adverse circumstances and reach the heights of holiness and spiritual leadership. In the field of education, Bakhita's story has become a valuable tool for teaching about the history of slavery, human rights, and the importance of compassion and forgiveness. Many schools and educational programs use her biography as an inspiring case study. For migrants and refugees, Bakhita offers an example of how it is possible to find a home and purpose in a foreign land. Her ability to adapt to a new culture while maintaining her unique identity resonates with many who find themselves displaced from their homes. In the realm of spirituality, Bakhita has left a rich legacy. Her deep faith and unwavering trust in God, even in the darkest moments, continue to inspire spiritual seekers from all traditions. Her writings, though simple, offer profound insights into the nature of divine love and the importance of gratitude. Pope Francis, in particular, has highlighted Bakhita as an example of faith in action. In his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, the Pope cites Bakhita as a model of fraternity and hope. He describes her as someone who, despite having suffered terribly, did not allow herself to be overcome by resentment but chose the path of forgiveness and love. In Italy, where Bakhita spent most of her adult life, her impact continues to be deeply felt. The city of Schio, where she lived and died, has become a place of pilgrimage. The Canossian house where she served now houses a museum dedicated to her life and legacy. Each year, thousands of pilgrims visit this place to honor her memory and seek her intercession. In the fight against modern slavery, Bakhita has become a central figure. Many organizations working to combat human trafficking and assist survivors of slavery have adopted Bakhita as their patron. Her story offers hope to survivors and motivation to those fighting against these injustices. Bakhita's legacy also extends to interreligious dialogue. Although she converted to Catholicism, her life exemplifies values that resonate in many religious traditions: forgiveness, compassion, resilience, and unconditional love. Her story has been used as a meeting point for dialogue between Christians and Muslims, especially in Africa. In art and culture, Bakhita's figure has inspired numerous works. Books have been written, films produced, and artworks created that explore her life and impact. These representations help keep her memory alive and spread her message of hope and forgiveness to new generations. For the Catholic Church in Africa, Bakhita represents an important milestone. As the first Sudanese saint, her canonization was a moment of great pride and celebration for African Catholics. Her life demonstrates that holiness knows no geographical or cultural boundaries, and that Africa has much to offer to the universal church. In the field of psychology and trauma therapy, Bakhita's story provides valuable insights into human resilience and the healing power of forgiveness. Her ability to overcome deeply traumatic experiences and find meaning and purpose in life is studied by psychologists and therapists working with trauma survivors. For youth around the world, Bakhita offers a model of courage and determination. Her life demonstrates that it is possible to overcome even the most overwhelming obstacles and create a positive impact in the world. Many youth programs and Catholic youth groups have adopted Bakhita as their patron and inspiration. Ultimately, the most enduring legacy of Saint Josephine Bakhita is perhaps her testimony to the transformation that is possible through love and faith. Her life reminds us that no matter how dark our circumstances may be, there is always hope. It challenges us to look beyond our own struggles and reach out to others with compassion and love. Bakhita's story is not just the story of a saint, it is a call to action for all of us. It challenges us to confront the injustices in our world, to reach out to the marginalized and oppressed, and to believe in the possibility of transformation, both personal and social. As the world continues to face challenges of injustice, conflict, and suffering, the example of Saint Josephine Bakhita shines as a beacon of hope. Her life reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, it is possible not only to survive but to flourish and become a force for good in the world. May the legacy of Saint Josephine Bakhita continue to inspire future generations to fight for justice, practice forgiveness, and live with a love that transcends all barriers. Prayer to Saint Josephine Bakhita. O Saint Josephine Bakhita, beloved daughter of God, You who emerged from the depths of suffering to become a beacon of hope and love, intercede for us before the Heavenly Father. You who knew the weight of chains and the darkness of despair, teach us to trust in God's love even in our darkest moments. Saint Josephine, model of forgiveness and reconciliation, help us to forgive those who have hurt us and to see in every person the image of God. You who found freedom in serving God, guide us that we may fully dedicate ourselves to the love and service of our brothers and sisters. Patroness of the oppressed and the suffering, pray for all who are victims of injustice, slavery, and human trafficking in our world. Saint Josephine Bakhita, example of unwavering faith, strengthen our trust in God's goodness and help us to be instruments of His love in the world. May your life of transformation and holiness inspire us to seek God's will in our lives and to persevere in the path of faith and love. Saint Josephine Bakhita, pray for us. Amen. This prayer reflects the most significant aspects of the life and legacy of Saint Josephine Bakhita. It invokes her intercession and invites us to follow her example of faith, forgiveness, and unconditional love. In praying this prayer, we join the multitude of people around the world who find inspiration and comfort in the life of this extraordinary saint. The story of Saint Josephine Bakhita is a powerful testimony to the transforming love of God and the indomitable resilience of the human spirit. May her life continue to inspire future generations to fight for justice, practice forgiveness, and live with a love that transcends all barriers.